Cadel was in a very sour mood when he first met Detective Inspector Saul Greenhouse. The day had started badly. To begin with, Cadel had been woken up at 3 a.m. by the sound of piercing screams coming from Janen's bedroom. Though only 6 years old, Janen had the lung capacity of a whale. He also suffered from night terrors, and the combination was deadly. Cadel usually felt sorry for Janen, who had been living in foster homes for most of his life. But it was hard to sympathize with anyone at 3 o'clock in the morning, let alone a kid who could scream like a hysterical gibbon. As a result of his interrupted sleep, Cadel was late for breakfast. Not that it mattered. He didn't have to go to school, so Mr. and Mrs. Darkkon never insisted that he be awake at a specific time. But Mace and Janen did attend school and were finishing their eggs just as Cadel arrived in the kitchen. Had Cadel been feeling more alert, he would never have sat down to eat just then. He would have waited until Mace was out of the house and running to catch the bus, his gray shirt untucked and his thick legs pumping. Had Cadel used his brain, he would have sensed trouble in the air and tried to head it off. The whole problem was that he couldn't protect his own bedroom. There was a house rule about always knocking first, and another rule about respecting privacy. These rules were written in beautiful script on a piece of handmade paper that was pinned to the door of the pantry cupboard. Hazel had done an evening course in calligraphy. But both rules were quite easy to break because Hazel had banned locks and keys from the Darkkon premises. Cadel could understand her point of view. One of her previous foster sons had locked himself in his bedroom before trying to set it alight. Leslie, her husband, had then been forced to smash through the door with a hammer. So, although Hazel continuously said nice things about sharing and everyone always being welcome everywhere, Cadel felt sure that her open-door policy was rooted in fear. She was afraid of what might happen if, during an emergency, she couldn't reach any of the kids in her charge. This was certainly Fiona's opinion. Fiona Curry was Cadel's social worker. She had told Cadel about the locked bedroom incident after Cadel had finally complained to her about Mace, who liked to mess around with other people's possessions. It was pointless complaining to Hazel, as Cadel had discovered. Her answer to every problem was what she called a family conference. "I'm sorry, Cadel," Fiona had said. "I know it must be hard, but it won't be forever. Just hang in there. Mace isn't nearly as bright as you are. Surely you can handle him for a little while, until things are sorted out?" Most people seemed to jump to the same conclusion about Mace, whose real name was Thomas Logg. They thought that he was stupid. They looked at his lumbering form, his vacant grin, and his clumsy movements, and they made allowances. They heard his slow, awkward speech patterns and dismissed him as a big, dumb kid. Whenever he smashed something, they called it an accident. Cracked windows and broken doorknobs were explained away. Mace, they said, had badly underdeveloped fine motor skills for a 14-year-old. He didn't know his own strength. He might have poor impulse control, but he wasn't malicious. He wasn't clever enough to be malicious. Only Cadel had doubts about this interpretation of Mace's conduct. In Cadel's opinion, Mace was a lot smarter than he let on. Not brilliant, of course, but cunning. Had he been as stupid as everyone made out, Mace wouldn't have been so quick to take advantage of the few minutes granted to him while Cadel was eating breakfast. How many minutes had it been? 6? 7? Long enough for Cadel to gobble down an English muffin. Long enough for Mace to empty his bladder into Cadel's bed. When Cadel returned to his room, he found his mattress wet and stinking. "Mace did it," he told Hazel.
"No, I didn't."
That was another thing about Mace. He had perfected the art of sounding completely clueless.
"I did not. He's blaming me because he wet his bed."
"Did you really wet your bed, Cadel?"
asked Janen, who wet his own bed all the time. He sounded pleased, even excited, to discover that someone else shared his problem, especially someone who'd recently turned 15.